Hello, welcome to the Villa Talks podcast, and we are back after a very, very special night. A historic victory. Bayern Munich 0. Well, Aston Villa 1, Bayern Munich 0. Unbelievable scenes, epic victory. And with me this week to share in the glory, although Carl's looking a bit confused. I don't think he can hear me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Carl?
I can. My headphones keep coming in and out.
Good start. I've got Chadsy, Carl. I'm back with a bang. It's AJ.
Yeah, I'm back.
How are you, mate?
I'm back for the big games. Champions League.
Glory hunting fan.
Got to get the best squad out there, haven't you? That you can.
Yeah.
I mean, some of these guys, they're all right for West Ham away or in the league or whatever, like easy games like that. But for the big ones, you got to get the big guys out, and so you had Bardell on the preview and me on the post match. Like that's what you.
And also,
what you need.
Chadsy, it's been a long time, mate. The original member of the Villa Talks podcast, back as well, bringing it back. You're the Tyro Mings of the podcast, I would say, mate.
The OG.
Great to be back.
The OG. How are you, mate?
To be back, mate. Might be a short-term loan, but yeah, great to be back on the pod after such a memorable period, but obviously a special night last night.
Yeah. We'll touch on the game. Obviously, we'll talk about all the various events within the game, get the guys' thoughts, just get the general mood. Be interested to hear your comments and thoughts and questions as well. While Carl sorts out his headphones, because I can hear myself, so I'm not sure what's going on there. I think it's working, mate. I'll put you on mute for now until you sort yourself out. But yeah, no, we'll talk about the game, obviously, and just get the general mood and general gist, and maybe we'll do a little mini preview of the Man United game. They're currently drawing 2-2. They were winning 2-0, and now back to 2-2. But as AJ said before we went on the pod, he doesn't really care about Thursday night football, do you, mate? So I don't think anyone else does. But
yes, for the small teams, mate.
Small teams. Yeah. Exactly right. Where should we start? Obviously, a nice little intro video there, and a little harking back to 1982, obviously, with Gary Shaw and John Duran. I don't know who did that picture on Twitter, but it's a great picture. I really liked it, so I thought I'd share it. But Chadsy, me and you were sitting next to each other at the game yesterday, and obviously quite an emotional one. What were your thoughts and how were you feeling going into the game yesterday?
Yeah, I was excited, obviously. I think it's been a long time coming, being back at the very elite of European football. It's the first time in my lifetime. And the journey we've been on since Emery took over a couple of years ago now is unbelievable. And I think still goes very much under the radar nationally in terms of what he's done to turn this club around from being a bit of a mess, to be honest, to one of the standout clubs, I think, in English football, and aiming to be one of them in European football. We're probably a few years off that. But in terms of the way we're run, in terms of how much trust we've got in the manager and how much of a well-oiled machine that the football part is of Aston Villa Football Club. So the fixture list and the way the fixture fell, with it being Bayern Munich at home, as we've talked about before, was just meant to be. That fixture was special, and like you said, Holmes, it was quite emotional actually, and it's quite hard to put your finger on why it was emotional. I've been trying to figure that out today, why when the players came out and at the end of the game I was actually welling up a bit. And I think it's because 1982 and everything that's happened with Aston Villa and Bayern Munich and the history of the club, for people of my generation, and I think probably yourself as well, it actually isn't relevant to us. It's something we sing about, it's something we talk about, it's something we brag about, but it's not something I saw. It's not something I've ever connected with. It's not something that I've ever felt really has been part of my Aston Villa journey. But last night playing Bayern Munich, and beating them 1-0 with the goalkeeper having a worldie and a late goal and all of the drama that came with it, it was so surreal, and it did feel like the current generations connecting with the generation that passed through one game of football. And all of a sudden I felt like the history of Aston Villa Football Club became even more relevant to me, and the feelings of like family members and people that have sort of we're following their footsteps of following Villa. It was really, really unique and really special. I don't think we'll have a night like that in the whole 10 ever again. So just truly amazing, mate, and I felt so privileged to be there.
Yeah, definitely one of those you had to be there kind of moments, but quite poetic, AJ, wasn't it? How it's all come together in terms of, you know.
Yeah, thanks, mate. One of those had to be there moments.
I know, yeah. Sorry,
the
mate.
only one of us that wasn't there.
Yeah. I said that. As soon as I said that, I was like, I'm going to go to AJ. In my head, I was thinking, I'm going to go to AJ next, and then
But you know what?
But in terms of how it's all come together with Gary Shaw obviously passed away, the class of 1982. Playing Bayern Munich, being back in the Champions League, you know, being the first home, because Bayern Munich could easily have been the third or fourth home fixture, but it was the first one back with the Champions League anthem being played and everything that's going on around the club. It's just meant to be, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it's one of those things as well where 41 years since we've been in the competition, ended Bayern's 41 game unbeaten streak in the group stage. Unai was the manager of the last team that did it. Like, obviously, there's always these things that sort of, like, of course, they're coincidences, really, but it does just sort of add to the magic of the story and the narrative of it. And, you know, I was saying to you off air at the beginning, Omar, you know, I wasn't fortunate enough to be there, but I've had a super stressful couple of weeks at work. And, you know, the beauty of football is that kind of collective escapism, like joy, regardless of anything else that's going on in your life. It can give you something, and even when you're crap, it still gives you that sense of being part of something. And nights like last night, and you know, when the whole end started singing, you know, Gary Shaw, you know, how could you not be emotional about that? And because it, you know, and I guess Chadsy touched on this, it like football is so central to a lot of people's lives, and people get so much joy from it and so much anguish as well, but like that thing that you experience with your friends, with your family, that, you know, these are the nights that's absolutely made of, you know. And I was here on my own. I had a lovely night. I got a great burger delivered from Melt in Bromsgrove. Not sponsored, but you know, I'd recommend it. Some loaded fries. Had a couple of drinks while my kids were asleep upstairs, and it was an amazing night. What I don't recommend, by the way, is streaming TNT on Discovery Plus, because you're better off having
I've heard that
illegal stream. Absolute bullshit. £30 I paid for that. But anyway, it didn't spoil my enjoyment too much, but it was a slightly.
I did think of you yesterday, AJ. I was thinking about the pods that we've done together. Obviously the Gerrard pod when we lost to Fulham, that was me and you, if you remember that. How depressed we were that night.
The Grealish one.
The Grealish one as well, and what we've gone through as even in a short. I mean, obviously we've been Villa fans for a long time, you know, all of us. But even in the last few years, from the Championship days to the lockdown days to Gerrard to now.
Well, in the same night, I think 5 or 6 years ago, the same night was 6 years ago was Cabbage Gate, you know, and I was at that game where we absolutely shot ourselves in the foot against Preston, and you know, that was a real low point. So again, like in terms of the continuity and the story of the club, the fact that was the same night, and now here we are beating Bayern Munich at home. Incredible. You know, absolutely amazing.
Lots of people genuinely think that Chadsy was the one responsible for the cabbage. Chaz, is that right? After your social media post yesterday, you were getting some grief.
I jokingly posted on Instagram 6 years since I threw a cabbage at Steve Bruce, and far too many people fell for it, thinking it was genuinely me. I had to go away and do a bit of research.
I always think about that guy. How do you get a cabbage into the? You can't get a Coke. Yeah, you can't get a Coke lid in the ground. Actually. How do you get a cabbage in there? But,
you must have worked in the catering department.
Someone at home who's asked him to bring that cabbage home is going to be annoyed as well, aren't they? What do you mean you've thrown it? It's supposed to be for tea. What are you doing?
Yeah. How am I going to make coleslaw now?
Yeah.
Carl, you were there last night. How are you? Have you recovered? How are you feeling?
So I wear a smartwatch, and my heart rate got up to 180 beats per minute, and I was sitting down at Villa Park, and it only got down into two figures by about half one in the morning. On Tuesday, it was my second wedding anniversary, and I put an Instagram post up saying 2 years since the best day of my life. Who knew it would only take 24 hours before it was knocked down into second place?
I was gonna ask you about that actually, so I'm glad you've revealed the answer to the entire world.
She listened.
I've already told her.
Yeah,
all right, good.
Fair enough.
Yeah, no.
It was.
I wasn't expecting that.
No,
but you where were you sitting? Whereabouts were you sitting?
The North Stand, which is a absolute nightmare. It's not fit for purpose, really. So upper north as well. But all the little niggles, all the sort of stuff about ticket prices, which I still think was way too much. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. And when I was,
it was always going to be the way, wasn't it? It was always going to be the way. That
I wasn't thinking about how much it cost me. I wasn't thinking that it took me 25 minutes to get in the ground, even though I was there an hour early. I wasn't thinking about any of that because it was genuinely the best, my best experience of being a Villa fan. I was at the two cup final wins in 94 and 96. This for some reason, I think it's because of the journey since then. I was only sort of early teens then, where I thought, we're just going to win. We'll win trophies all the time. And little did I know we were going to be shite for the next 20 years. I think my best experience of being a Villa fan last night was absolutely.
That says something, doesn't it? I mean, I remember the trophy wins too, but I think I never thought I'd be in a position where I'd say winning a Champions League group game feels just as important, if not more important, than those League Cup victories. Because I'm like Chadsy. I'm always about the trophies.
Yes,
that's what matters to me. But I don't know if I'll maybe in a week's time I'll think completely different. But I don't know. That's what I feel like that.
There was a Villa fan that rang in Talk Sport that was at the final in '82, and he said last night was better for him than watching Villa win the European Cup, which is
that's something
very hard to explain to people that don't quite understand what last night meant. But him saying it just kind of justified my own emotional investment in it. That if he was saying that, then what I was thinking wasn't probably as over the top as I could forgive myself for. So really interesting perspective.
Yeah,
I think also it says something about how much the game has changed now, and how the gap between even being one of the top four teams in the Premier League, which we were on merit last year, we didn't fluke that. We were comfortably, we were in the right place in the league, and we're showing that this year as well. We've not had the toughest run of fixtures so far, but we're right up in that mix again. We're genuinely, as Sam said in the chat earlier today, one of the top 5 or 6 teams without debate. But the gap between that and being a Bayern Munich or a Man City or a Real Madrid, that gap is huge now. And for a team like that to come to Villa Park when 6 years ago we were struggling in the mid-table of the Championship, and for us to beat them, that's the context. That whereas in '82, winning the European Cup was obviously still a massive achievement, pinnacle of the sport, etc. But if you look at who was winning it around that time, English teams were winning it pretty much every season around that time, and did well until the '80s when we got banned. And even within that, it was teams like us, like Forest, it wasn't necessarily it wasn't a closed shop in the way it is now. And so I think partly there's a Villa story to this, which we've talked about, and is why it's personally emotional in terms of our own context as a football club.
Yeah.
But I think it's also part of that wider story of how the game has changed. And in '96, you could see how a team like Villa would keep winning League Cups and FA Cups, perhaps not the league very often, but we had finished second not that long ago. Whereas now, even with as far as we've come, that next step is still so huge that I think that's what makes it such a meaningful win, and why I can understand why someone who was there in '82 might feel that way.
Yeah, no, really, really well put there, AJ. I think that's contextualizes it really well. And I think, we'll come on to that. Me and Chadsy were speaking about the game yesterday, at the game, during and after, obviously, and just talking about how good Bayern Munich were and how impressive they were, even though they lost, and just the quality throughout the team. But let's rewind it back, Chadsy, to before the game. Us walking down to the ground, looking at the team news. Philigine's on the bench. Oh, sorry, Philigine's starting the game. Carlos is starting the game. Leon Bailey's on the bench. And me and Jugsy and Deckers were sitting there thinking, well, Philogene, that's a Carlos I expected, but Philogene, that's a brave call. Not sure about that. Tell the viewers and listeners, what did you say at that time when we were talking about that?
Well, not to be smart after the event, I just think it's an obvious thing to say. I think it's lunacy to question Unai Emery. It's just he knows what he's doing. He will pick the right team for the fixture. He will 99 times out of 100 set us up in the correct way. So, yes, looking on the face of it, people might have been surprised by the inclusion of Philogene, but ultimately, this is the first time in my lifetime where you can just relax and not worry about what the manager's doing. Just have complete faith and complete trust in him and not question anything. There might be the odd game where we come out and think, well, I might have done that differently if I was him or whatever. But in terms of pre-match selections and setting up a team, we've probably got the best guy in Europe, if not the world. There's nobody I'd rather have managing this club and setting up teams to get results, especially against big clubs and teams that are going to have a lot of the ball than Unai Emery. So I just told you all to relax, basically. And
you did.
What will be, will be.
I think the other thing as well is, even if he gets it wrong, he's going to change it, which with other managers, the amount of times we've said on this podcast across various different managers, and even going back to Martin O'Neill, we used to say it, when we were challenging for the top four, great plan A, but what do we do with a plan B? Whereas with Emery, even if he gets it wrong, he'll see what he's done wrong and he'll change it. And you even saw that with Bailey. There's no emotion around it. Bailey comes on, well, he needs to come off again. So I think that's the other element of why you can be a bit more relaxed about it as well.
Yeah, no, definitely. And Carl, Bayern Munich hadn't lost a group or league stage game in Champions League. I think it's 41 or 42 games. Last team to beat them, and last manager was Unai Emery in PSG. So it had to be Unai Emery again, obviously, as well. How confident were you going into the game beforehand? I mean, regardless of the team that we saw and how that affected things, but how confident were you going into the game?
I can't pretend I was confident we were going to win the game, but I'd heard people talk about how a draw would be a magnificent result, and I didn't agree with that. It was like a draw at home under Unai Emery. I expect us to be able to do that against anyone, and I thought a win is a possibility. If you asked me to choose which I thought was the most probable outcome, I would have thought a Bayern Munich win. But then you've got to consider that, they've got absolute world-class players in pretty much every position. They're the sort of players going forward are unbelievable. The players that they kept bringing on, and I forgot that they had. So I was like, oh, Jesus Christ, not another one. I think they brought. I thought Musiala come on about 4 times, but it was just 4 different players that were brilliant. But then you have to remember that whilst it might be a little bit mismatched player-wise, it was also mismatched coach-wise, because Unai Emery is miles better than Kompany. Kompany's so lucky to have that job. It's a bit Pep Guardiola esque in that it seems that for some reason people are just convinced he's going to be a good manager. He's got brilliant teams who will win loads of trophies in Germany. He'll get another job with loads of brilliant players, and it'll just be one of those, I think. Because he was awful for Burnley last year. I know they were trying to play good football, but it was only, didn't Luton finish above them? I just thought, when I started thinking about it, and it was after about 15 minutes when we started getting our foot in the game, I was like, Unai Emery's going to know exactly what to do here. And whilst I still wasn't massively confident we'd win, I wasn't expecting a hammering. And as I say, I saw a few people say a draw would be a brilliant result, and I didn't share that view.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. To be honest, I going into the game when I saw that side, I was like, oh, they were going to get battered, or we're going to score a few here, just because Bayern Munich. Well, let's not forget Bayern Munich. I know they got Vincent Kompany's manager, but they're in some pretty good form this season. They've scored lots and lots of goals. They've been a bit of a force. Yes, they drew with Leverkusen, but as an attacking force, they look unbelievable. And as you say, they're bringing on Leroy Sané, Matthias Tell, Musiala. These kinds of players who are just top draw. They're getting any side pretty much. And looking at our squad, Bayern Munich squad, they've got to be one of the favourites of the Champions League. But after that first sort of 10-15 minute spell where we were finding our feet, we were a bit nervous. You could see that maybe the occasion was getting to us a little bit. We did seem to settle down a little bit, and you could see the obvious game plan was to contain, but also utilise Watkins as much as we could with that one-on-one with Upamecano.
Yeah, and I think you mentioned the journey we've been on, and I thought tactically I was reminded quite a bit of actually when Emery first came in and he was just trying to fix the mess. And the first thing he did was make us hard to beat, whoever we were playing. And the way he did that was a narrow back four and effectively the two wide midfield players tucking into almost a back six sometimes, usually a back five, and that was the Philogene role. But certainly second half when Maatsen came on, who is an actual fullback, it was genuinely like a narrow four and then almost like two wing backs either side, and then the two midfielders sitting in the middle. And both forward players dropping in at times as well. And that did make us really hard to beat and really hard to break down, however exceptional Bayern Munich are. If you're well drilled in that shape, it's a really tough thing to play through. But as you say, what we were also able to do was play through the lines, either direct up to Watkins or 2-3 passes, but very clear that we were, playing pretty direct straight through the middle. And Watkins isolated against Upamecano. I mean, how the first one was a definite foul and a definite booking. And I could kind of see why the reason the ref thought he shouldn't give it, I think, was it was a tangle of legs. And I don't think Upamecano was trying to foul him, but it's still a foul because he clumsily clattered his legs from behind, and Watkins would have been through our goal. So to not even give that as a free kick, if he gives a free kick, he's got to book him. And then the second one was one of the clearest yellow cards you'll ever see. But again, Emery had clearly identified that everyone knows what Bayern does is they go man to man, they leave one man back with your centre forward, and he would have known that Watkins had his beat in for both pace and strength. And throughout that, we always had a chance. We always had a chance if we kept a clean sheet, which, by the way, we've done in both games now, haven't we? Or no, did we? Both Champions League games, which is we can't buy a clean sheet in the Premier League. I think that's really impressive. Going back to the United teams in the when they were strong in Europe, Ferguson always used to say the first thing to do is just not concede and then take it from there. And I think that was the plan last night. But then there were things that we obviously worked on to get forward quickly. And even stuff like everybody knows Neuer's off his line, but the fact that they all talked in the post-match interviews that we spent 90 minutes in a meeting and Emery kept showing us, like even if John Duran is not consciously thinking about that conversation, the fact that it's been drilled into him for probably 20 minutes of that 90 minutes, that's going to have contributed to the fact that he's taken that shot on the way he did. So it's all of those little things that Unai Emery pays attention to that delivered that result. Really.
Yeah, no, definitely. And then we'll come on to John Duran later, and there's plenty of individuals we can talk about. Chadsy, obviously, the likes of Carlos, Pau Torres in the centre back positions, Luca Dean, Tillemans again as well, and Philogene as well. We'll come on to them in a second, but I just want to talk about Watkins back again. How important, because obviously there's a lot of clamour with John Duran now. He's getting the headlines. A lot of neutral fans are saying, he's knocking on the door, he needs to be starting, etc., etc. But I don't think they realised how important Watkins is in terms of his all-round game, and also how important he was last night for that 60, 70 minutes where he battered that defence and tired them out for John Duran to come and take the plaudits. I mean, how important was that performance for that 67 minutes by Watkins?
Yeah, I actually felt really sorry for him as he plodded off the pitch, because I just knew that someone else was going to grab the headlines, and he does so much for the team. He is, I think, the complete striker. You might say he wants to add a little bit more, be a bit more clinical in front of goal, but his numbers stack up, to be honest, and all strikers miss chances. I think he's an absolutely brilliant footballer. He runs the channels, holds the ball up so well. His work rate is incredible. He can spin in behind like he did multiple times last night. He can come short. He's a leader as well. What I love about him is you can see what a senior player is in that squad now. The players come out after half-time. He's the one encouraging them, giving a little pep talk before the second half kicks off. He's one after a game that's going around shaking every player's hand and make sure it acknowledges all four stands of the crowd. He's a proper leader, and his quality was there to be seen last night against an elite European team. He, like you say, he ran them ragged, and everything that happened after that, and the joy that Duran got because Upamecano was having to stand off him and couldn't defend high for the risk of a yellow card. But then Neuer was in no man's land because Watkins had kept coming in behind. It all stems from Ollie's work, and Duran is picking up the pieces and taking all the credit. And he deserves all that credit because he's a brilliant player himself. But, you know, for me, it's working at the moment. Duran's coming on and scoring goals as a super sub. Let's not change it. I think that healthy competition is what this squad has missed in the last 2 or 3 years. We're seeing it in all positions. You know, Luca Digne is a different beast since Moreno signed and now Matson's come. And he himself is just another example of how healthy competition really does lift levels at this top elite in elite football. So Ollie Watkins for me just deserves all the credit, and I don't think there's any rush for us to be changing what's currently working.
Yeah, no, I agree with that, and I think with football the way it is now, especially with the 5 substitutes, you know, it's not really a game of 11v11 anymore. I think that, you know, that sort of 14-15, you know, they all have a massive part to play every game, and as we've seen this season. And it's how you utilise that. And obviously, Emery's been utilising it very well this season so far. And I don't think, you know, as long as John Duran's scoring and he's getting minutes, I don't think it's going to be a massive issue for him. I don't think it's like football was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever, you know, where it's like you have to start every game. You know, you that's a squad game. You contribute. Even Bailey, you know, he was, as Emery said in the post-match interview, he's not fully fit. He's playing with pain. You could see that he wasn't at the races, really. He came on as a sub for Ramsey, went off as a sub. And, you know, yes, he's obviously disappointed, but I don't think he was, you know, it wasn't like an embarrassing substitute for him like it would have been maybe a couple of years ago. He understood it and he took it and he high-fived Emery on the way out. And I think everyone gets it that they've got a role to play. Even Onana, you know, he's there to keep us solid for that sort of 55, 60 minutes. And Barty comes in and plays a bit more of a progressive role. Going back to the defence, Carl, Diego Carlos and Pau Torres. Diego Carlos in particular obviously had a torrid time over at Ipswich. I was there, Chadsy was there, and we watched him have, you know, another poor performance, let's face it, but along with a lot of other players as well. And a lot of fans have written him off, but these big occasions, as you saw in Arsenal Man City last season, and Arsenal away as well, seems to get the best out of him, doesn't it? And also, you know, let's not forget he's played at a pretty high level before, and he's played in big games before for the likes of Seville. So, you know, again, it shows you how, you know, Emery's thinking and how important he is that, you know, he puts faith in someone like Carlos. But how impressed were you, and how important was his performance yesterday?
Yeah, it was massively important. You're right in that this is the exact sort of game that he excels in. He's kind of a backs to the wall, not necessarily backs to the wall, but sort of more when we're playing more defensively and we're expecting everything to be a bit more last ditch. He's a perfect defender. He's a bit of a beast. What he's not so good at is when we're trying to sort of control the pace of the game from the back. Pau Torres is brilliant at it. Carlos isn't. I think a lot of he was poor against Ipswich, but I think a lot there's the additional issue of people's thoughts that him being in the team means Conser's playing right back, and people have different views about Conser playing at right back. He's played brilliantly at right back many times. Is he a better centre half than he is a right back? Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
Is he a better centre half than Carlos? Yeah, pretty definitely. But do we have, without Cash being fit, do we have a right back that you could have trust going into that game? And I know we played Philogene and he was excellent, but Bogard at right back, he was never gonna make that decision. And Nedeljkovic, he wasn't going to get his full debut. He started against Wickham, didn't he? But you know, he wasn't going to start him either. So I think it's a combination with Carlos in that he does make errors. I mean, everyone's clamouring for Tyrone Mings to come back. Tyrone Mings makes errors as well. I think Mings at his best is a better defender than Carlos at his best. But I think it's a combination between people not wanting Conte to play at right back as well as people's issues with Carlos specifically. So, but on the night, he was absolutely brilliant. He was, there was a bit, and I haven't watched the game back, there was a bit where he seemed to just fly across the box and do a diving header at some stage where it looked like he was putting everything in the way.
Oh, you've gone, mate.
It was one of our best.
Oh, you're back. You're back. You went for a little bit. Sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You're back.
Yeah, I was just saying that I think Carlos was one of our best players.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think he was fantastic. It's almost like when he plays against weaker opposition, he becomes a bit too casual.
Yeah. It's a focus thing, isn't it?
Yeah, almost a bit like Mings, I suppose.
Yeah, he loses concentration, and when you're in a situation like that where you're forced to be on all the time, like a lot of his errors are like when he's playing out, or you know, it tends. And also, I suppose it is worth mentioning that he did give away that handball at the end, which if Harry Kane had scored that free kick, we might be having a different conversation. But
although if he hadn't handballed it, I think they were through on goal. So in a way,
yeah, exactly. Maybe it was worth taking the yellow. Who knows? Also, if you see the replay, it was quite high up on his arm, which no one seemed to be complaining about.
Yeah.
Was it above the sleeve line?
We don't need to worry about that now, mate.
But no, we don't. But I mean, again, in terms of errors, whatever, I think. I'm not disagreeing that his performance was massive or whatever, but it's also one of those things which actually, as Sam mentioned in our WhatsApp earlier, Emery was talking about how obviously it was a brilliant night and we set up brilliantly and we played well and we created chances and took them. But was it a dissimilar performance to the Arsenal game where we just didn't take our chances and they did? No, and that's what Emery said. And, you know, I think there's an element of that with if they had scored from that free kick right at the end and it was a handball that he probably could have avoided doing, then I think we might have been having a slightly different. Well, we wouldn't, because we're very intelligent and thoughtful football fans. The wider narrative around
those live are there. Yeah. I mean, Pau Torres. I just want to talk about him as well. Obviously, partnering Diego Carlos, and obviously known for what he did for the goal in terms of the build-up play, and obviously that was important throughout the game. When we did manage to get into good positions, but his defensive work yesterday was probably the best I've seen. I would say in terms of putting his body on the line, getting blocks in, and just being physical as well. Was quite impressive, wasn't he, AJ?
Oh, exceptional! I mean, again, he is. I thought when we signed him, it was a massive coup, and there's always been. You know, he's obviously played at a very high level and with Emery before, but not at one of those clubs, those totally elite clubs that we were just talking about at the beginning of the pod. And I think that's because the question has been over his defensive capabilities, primarily around his physicality and his ability in the air, etc. But there was none of that last night against a very big, athletic, strong team. So much pace in that team as well, and never once did he look exposed. And also the disallowed goal. What a great composed finish that was from him as well. Like, I mean, obviously Ramsey was 2 yards offside. It wasn't like even a slightly controversial decision. He was miles off. I probably didn't need to be, actually, given how slack their marking was, which was a slight frustration for me. But like the finish there, the composure, and that's what he's all about. And he's just so brave. And I know that's what Emery's trying to get all our players to be when we're playing through the lines, especially. But some of the passes that he attempts are just outrageous, and he finds like far more of them than he has any right to do. So, I mean, I think he's an exceptional player, and if he can consistently raise his defensive level to the degree he demonstrated last night, then you'd make an argument for him being one of the best centre halves in the world.
Yeah, and
I don't think he's there now. But if he's consistently at that level, there's no one better as a ball playing centre half than him. I can't think of anyone who's better on the ball. As our overall defender, obviously, there's people.
And he did. And
if he can raise that defensive level, then he's right up there.
To be fair, against Ipswich, he did put in a sort of game-saving block as well in that game as well. Again, so maybe there has been some work going on there in the background. Let's talk about the goal then, Chads. We've talked about the match and our general feeling, but the goal in particular, we were right behind it, and we saw that pass that Torres did. And it starts from I think it was a free kick for Bayern, maybe, and he collects in, and we quickly distribute it out to Torres. Talk us through the goal, your view of the goal, how it went in, your thoughts going into that. With the ball going into the net and the celebrations afterwards.
Yeah, as soon as he did like an overarm throw to find Torres, and as soon as Torres got the ball, I saw that space open up. It was like the midfield had disappeared. And it just became obvious to everyone, I think, that it was on, because he'd been pinging those balls into Watkins' feet, and Watkins was gathering the ball with 2 or 3 people around him. But all of a sudden, there just appeared this gaping hole between the right back and Upamecano. And if anyone was going to find that space, it was going to be Torres by the passing range he demonstrated already throughout the night. And as soon as he played it, I honestly thought Duran's just going to hit this. I had a feeling he's in the headspace, and he would have, like you say, been watching the game, and Emery would have been teeing him up because Neuer's high position was, whilst it is pretty standard in modern football now for the keepers to be out of their area and sweeper keepers, Neuer was at an extreme last night. Yeah. He really was taking the piss at times, and it was a bit of sort of German arrogance, I think, that he thought he could just stand on the halfway line and dictate play against little old Aston Villa. And I was delighted that he got made to look stupid by Duran, to be honest. I don't think there's any other player in the Premier League that would have done that, tried it, had the confidence to do it. He just doesn't care, does he? If that had gone to the corner flag, he wouldn't have bothered. He's not. I don't think he cares what anyone thinks about anything. So it was the right player at the right time, the right opportunity, and it was just absolutely perfect. And as soon as that ball went over Neuer, I was confident he was onside, so I let myself go again. I think after having a goal disallowed and the scenes in that first half, you're always then thinking, oh God, that's going to ruin the rest of the game, because every time we score, I'm going to be half thinking it's being ruled out again. But I thought he was onside. So, and the place just erupted and it was shaking, and it was a very, very memorable couple of minutes. But then watching the goal back, it was actually a lot closer to being offside than we all thought.
Yeah, it was. It really was. Yeah. I thought he was offside. I mean, obviously that first goal, Chadsy, Chadsy broke his neck. Deckers still can't move his elbow. And I just, have you seen that Kevin Hart clip where I think it's Dwayne Johnson and who is it? Anthony Joshua, and they go for a 5 and Kevin Hart just disappears. Have you seen that one? That was basically me yesterday with next to Deckers and Chadsy. They just gathered over me, and I just couldn't breathe for a good minute. I had no idea what had happened. I thought I'd gone, and then for it to be disallowed, it's so frustrating. But then when Duran's goal goes in, these guys are celebrating. I'm just like mouth open, like, is it a goal? Is it offside? I thought, I couldn't celebrate. It's a shame, but I just couldn't get myself to celebrate because I just thought he was offside. But yeah, it is what it is.
I think also just on the goal, it really highlights the risk of the Bayern approach. So for 95% of that game, their press was absolutely relentless. Like the most difficult press to work through that I think we've probably seen at Villa Park, and I can't think of what. I mean, obviously, City, Arsenal, they're great at it, but because they overload more and they take more risk at the back, there are more players in their press. Like they are pressing with a front six often. And when it works, it's really hard to manage that and deal with it. I thought we handled it pretty well overall, but there's always going to be times where they're going to win it back off you high up the pitch. But the risk for them, particularly because they go man to man, is that 2 or 3 times a game, they're going to give you that opportunity where they leave it wide open. And then, you do. We needed 2 fantastic bits of quality, arguably 3 because of Emi's awareness to throw it out quickly as he did. When often what we do is hold the ball and try and take the pressure and the build slowly from the back. That's often our way. So Emi's quick thinking, and then 2 fantastic bits of quality. You've still got to find that to take advantage of those opportunities, but the nature of their setup and their press means that there will be those opportunities. I mean, another good example of that is the Upamecano booking in the first half, where if he hadn't pulled him back, Watkins was in, and it was exactly the same situation where they just left themselves too exposed. We've only got to pick one great pass, and you're in trouble. And we are in a situation now where we've got players who can do that. Yeah, we've got Torres, but would Tielemans have found that pass? Quite possibly. Would Barkley have found that pass? Quite possibly. If McGinn was on the pitch, would he have found that pass? Quite possibly. So we are now in a situation where even against those elite teams, they might only give you 2 or 3 opportunities a game, but no system is without a weakness. That's Bayern's one, and we had the quality to exploit it.
And even with the sort of weaker wide areas, I think there was a few times where Rodgers beat the press, and if Ramsey had been on the pitch or Bailey had been fully fit, we then play it into those wide channels, and Ramsey's driving and Bailey's driving, and we're flooding the box. I think because of the injury to Ramsey and Bailey coming on not being quite at it, once we did beat the press last night, we were quite limited with our options. It was Watkins or Duran, or play it wide and the play got slowed down. I think if Ramsey had stayed on the pitch, it could have been quite different. I think we could have had more than 1 or 2 golden opportunities to either extend that lead or score earlier and then catch them on the break. So I think we did really well to cope with those injuries and still, like AJ says, exploit that opportunity when it came.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. I think we did manage to get in some good positions, Morgan Rodgers in particular, and we just couldn't quite find that final ball. Obviously, we did for the goal, but before that, obviously, Matson, for example, was through, and he could have maybe passed it. He went for a shot. There was one where Morgan Rodgers was through, and one where Morgan Rodgers was through, and he couldn't quite feed it. And there were several other ones. An honest shot, obviously, he saved by Neuer. And there was a few different moments like that where we could have been actually, you could have quite conceivably get 2 or 3 goals on the back of that. But after we'd scored, Carl, if the first half was the story of containment and Emery's tactics, and that the second half was mostly Bayern plugging away, and then Duran, the last sort of 10-15 minutes was very much Emi Martinez's show, wasn't it? And those couple of saves were monumental, really, and so important in that last stage of the game.
Initially, after we scored, so just before the 80th minute, I think from then to the 90th minute, I felt quite comfortable. It was only injury time when I felt it was a real backs to the wall. They're hammering us now. But Martinez's save in the first half was brilliant from, is it Sane?
Sane, Elise.
Yeah. It was a brilliant save, but his save, I don't know whether on the telly, AJ, the one where the ball was played across and the player run, it looked like it was offside to me. Where we made
I thought they didn't really show a replay of it, but my instinct was he was off, and we just played on and it was fine. But it means still a great save.
I watched it back, and it looks like Carlos was playing him on because he managed to go a bit too deep. So yeah.
But there's another one where the narrative could have changed then, I guess.
But then the save. Harry Kane did the sweet fuck all game. And
he was quite petulant, wasn't he? Do you not think he was quite petulant?
He should have been booked. He should have been booked. I can't remember.
Rugby tackled Rogers, didn't he?
Rogers,
rugby
yeah.
Absolutely clattered him. Yeah, absolutely.
He should have been booked.
Not getting booked for that is unbelievable.
But it was like that cross, sort of from deep. You could just see as soon as it left the player's foot. Oh, this is going straight onto Kane's head here. And Martinez clearly also knew that and knew exactly where he was going to try and put his header because it was a brilliant save. But then there was a big scramble, I think. That
Barkley cleared it about 4 times.
Seemed to go on for about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
So I thought we dealt with it quite well. I mean, they were always going to get a few opportunities. But Martinez, I think he was man. I think he was man of the match. I think the 3 wonderful saves he made. I think you have to give him man of the match.
I think the thing with Martinez as well is it seems to me, and I'm by no means an expert on goalkeeping, but me not being an expert on things never stops me having an opinion on them. So I'll crack on. It seems to me that like often he'll make saves and then you'll be like, well, yeah, but it wasn't a great finish or whatever. And I've been guilty of saying that as well. But I think Carl sort of touched on it there. What he is brilliant at is reading a situation and knowing, maybe I don't know if it's from the centre forward's body language or whatever it is, but he seems to always be like a step ahead and understand. Well, this is the finish that he's going to try here, so I need to do this. And I think that's also why he's such a great keeper, shithousery aside, in penalty shootouts. Because I think he's just really brilliant at reading people. So like he'll make a save with his feet and you'll be like, oh yeah, but it's it's a little bit straight at him, of course he's saved that or whatever, but actually it's because he's read it so well that the amount of similar situations where you see the ball go through a keeper's legs or whatever, I feel like you hardly ever see that with Martinez. You hardly ever see those little finishes that beat him around his feet and that sort of thing, because he just seems to have almost like a sixth sense for what finish.
Well, he said that. I don't know if you recall. So the Arsenal game last year when we beat them at home, Odegaard had a shot which he should have scored from, but Martinez made it look really comfortable and saved it. After the match, Martinez said that he does it quite often. He says he just gambles, and he said that in that shot in particular, he gambled that Odegaard would go that side, and obviously it made it look easier. Whereas I think obviously a normal keeper, not a superhuman keeper like Martinez, would just react. It's obviously risky, isn't it?
Yeah, but gambling in that sort of situation would suggest that he'd sort of fairly regularly go the wrong way. I don't think you ever see that. So I mean, he might be playing it down himself, because given all his antics, you'd expect him to be a really big-headed bloke, arrogant. But he doesn't come across like that. He thinks he's the best keeper in the world, but that's because he is the best keeper in the world. You're okay to think you're the best if you are the best. But yeah, I think maybe that's just him saying, "Oh, it was just a gamble." But I don't buy that. There seems to be a sixth sense.
Even if it is a gamble, though, I think even partly that when you gamble is a reading of the situation. Something like that Odegaard chance. It's like, well, I either gamble and have a chance of saving it, or I don't, and I've got no chance either way. Like if I just try and react. So I think there's an element of skill in even that, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I think I was reading an interview with, I can't remember, it was a Bayern player, it might be Mario Gomez or someone like that. I can't remember. They're talking about Peter Cech and how he had this same ability to read and have that sixth sense. And they were, I think it was Mario Gomez, it might be someone else, but we were talking about how he was going to go one way in the penalty shootout in the Champions League final, and then literally just before he kicked it, he changed his mind and he scored. And after the match, Peter Cech was like, "Why did you change your mind?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" He goes, "You were going to go this way, and then suddenly you just went the other way. Why did you change your mind?" He goes, "How did you know?" He goes, I could tell which way you were going to go as you were running up." And that's weird to think about, but obviously, if it, maybe he's got that same kind of ability, which is hard to teach. It's just one of those things you have. But yeah, Chadsy obviously really really vital saves at the end, and then I don't know what you thought, but to me it seemed like there was still like another 4 or 5 minutes of injury time left. When the ref blew the whistle, I was like, "Is that it? Is it gone already? Did it go that quick?"
It did go quickly, didn't it? I think once we'd survived that barrage and the goalmouth scramble after the header, I knew the game was done then. I think that was the moment for them. And we were winning that game 1-0. It was going to be Aston Villa 1, Bayern Munich 0, no matter what happened thereafter. But yeah, I was expecting a 2 or 3 minutes of whistling and cheering and trying to rush the the injury time through. But all of a sudden he blew the whistle and we were celebrating. So yeah, it did feel quite strange when he called an end to proceedings, but was not complaining.
No, and those full-time scenes, Chad, you know, we're sitting there in the upper Holt watching it all unfold and belting out Gary Shaw's name. You know, that's just special, wasn't it?
It was amazing, but I've just got a gripe still with the club. Just stop playing music. We do not need artificial atmosphere at Aston Villa Football Club on a European night or any other night. There's 42,000 people in the stadium. The whole town can generate its own noise. And by playing bullshit songs like Sweet Caroline, Hi Ho Aston Villa that we've sung before, and Wolverhampton sing, Sheffield Wednesday sing, just let us enjoy the moment with the players and give them the accolades and their own songs and their own chance to get the adulation of the crowd, because it just drives me mad. It's like they're forcing us down a route we don't want to go down, and because we're cheap and there's no other option, everyone just joins in. So Tommy Jordan, Chris Heck, Nassef Safiris, all of you, just sort it out, please.
There you have it. There you have it. Thanks, Chad. I kind of agree with that. I think Hi-Ho Aston Villa in particular, where it's, you know, it's really good for the Hi-Ho Aston Villa bit, but then the bit in between where it just goes really quiet and everyone's just waiting for the last bit. It's just like, you do sort of sense it, like, come on, just get on with it. But I don't know. I don't think about it either way, to be honest. But you know, we'll wrap up in a second, and we'll quickly touch on the Man United game. So Man United just scored, equalised 3-3.
Perfect.
They were losing 3-2.
The job for another few days.
Fernandez got sent off as well, by the way. So again, maybe that will get overturned as well. But before we talk about Man United quickly, and we're not going to talk about Man United too much, but AJ, what was your overriding feeling when the full-time whistle went, and how important do you think that victory is now for us to obviously progress in the Champions League?
How did I feel? I was obviously delighted, as we talked about at the beginning. You know, a lot of I was very conscious of not being there in that moment, like when we got over the line. But I think, like, obviously it's another step on the journey, isn't it? I think it's another step forward. It also means, you know, with the other fixtures that we've got coming up, you know, whatever Carl was saying about a draw not being a good result, I think in the context of the competition overall, I think it would have been a perfectly good result. But to now be on 6 points after 2 games, you know, given the fixtures that we've got and some very winnable games there, and you know, we're not taking anyone for granted. It's the Champions League, but we've just beaten Bayern Munich. So if we can't beat Celtic at home, you might end up clipping this up later in the year. But if we can't beat Celtic at home, then I'll be extremely disappointed. Especially given, you know, they keep getting battered in Europe. So I think, like, it just shows where we are now. It just shows where we are, and you know, as a segue into Manchester United, I will be very disappointed if we don't beat Manchester United at home, given where we are now and given where they are. It should be a home win for us. I'm not saying it will be. I know the whole history against United and how we always shoot ourselves in the foot and all of that sort of stuff. But in terms of where the two teams are now, what we did last night in Europe and what they're now struggling to do in a lesser competition against lesser opposition, I'll genuinely be disappointed if we lose the game. I mean, obviously I'm disappointed if we lose any game, but I would expect us to win the game at home against United on the weekend. And I can't remember any time in my life as a Villa fan where that's been the case, and that's what these sorts of results mean.
Yeah, I mean, Carl, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how we can't get up for a game like Man United. Obviously, it's Man United. We should get up for it. They're professionals. But after a result like Bayern Munich, you know, going into a Man United game, being so high after that game, how do you think the mentality would be, or do you not think it's a concern because of Unai Emery and how he is and how he operates and the mentality the squad has?
Yeah. So I don't think Emery will allow that to be the case. Although I did think there might have been a bit of that in the Ipswich performance, and there's only so much Emery can do. But that might have been more people not really wanting to miss the Bayern game. I'd be very surprised if we put in a half-assed performance. Unai Emery is a much better manager than Ten Hag. We've got better players than Man United. We're a better team. We're on the up. They're sort of sinking into oblivion, thankfully. So, 3-2 to Man U on Sunday.
Thanks.
The one thing I would say about the impact of the game last night, and Chadsy mentioned the injuries and how they impacted us during the game, but we're already missing McGinn. Probably not going to have Ramsey. Might well not have Onana either. You know, those are three key players. Yeah, Bailey's obviously not fully fit. So look, we have got a much deeper squad now, and as I say, I still would hope and expect that we beat United at the weekend at Villa Park. But actually, you know, there are some key players missing from that first 11, and that might put a bit of a strain on things, even aside from the sort of hangover of the emotional hangover of the game. There is also that physical aspect of it.
Yeah, Alec has just commented on Instagram. We're live on Instagram, by the way, as well.
How modern?
Yeah, he said, "Think United fans would be begging us to finish Ten Hag off," which sounds a bit wrong, to be honest.
He's not my type. I'm not finishing him off.
Not sure anyone's going to
finish
him off.
My worry is he might be gone. And if he's gone, it's a disaster.
Well, Maguire might have saved his job. He's the one who scored the equaliser. But Chadsy, last question for you, mate, and we'll wrap it up. But John Duran, Ollie Watkins, given the injuries, do you start them together on Sunday and do you go for it?
No, I don't think so. I think we carry on playing as we've been playing. We've only lost one game this season. We're 2 points off top of the league, 6 points out of 6 in the Champions League. Yes, maybe with the injuries, we might have to look at how the midfield's structured. But I think Philogene will play again. Barkley can come into that team. We've got options. I don't think Duran can do what Morgan Rogers can do. And I think if you play Morgan Rogers wide, you're taking arguably our best player this season out of his most effective position in a role that basically defines everything that we do. So I don't think we should start fitting square pegs into round holes. So no, I think we carry on as we are. Let Watkins run Martinez and Maguire and Evans or whoever they choose in that centre-back pairing ragged for 60 or 70 minutes. Hopefully he gets his goal and then Duran can come on and either add the icing to the cake or do the damage. But I just do not care who plays and how it comes. I am just desperately want 3 points on Sunday. I said before the game yesterday I'd take a win over United over a win against Bayern. Walking back to the car, we did reflect on that and say, no, that was special. And but still, I would start the week. I would say 3 points against United and a draw or a defeat against Bayern. I'd snap my hands off. Honestly, this is the game that I want to win more than any other in the Premier League. AJ says we're a better team than them, better players, better manager. We should win. Well, yeah, that was the case last year when they had their worst ever season. We had our best ever season. They still did double on us. They still had the day of their lives in that corner of the dugout stand celebrating McTominay's last-minute winner. We still threw away a 2-0 lead at Old Trafford. Honestly, I just want us to hammer these. I just despise them, and I want us to finally put the nail in the coffin of their decline. So, yeah, get the job done, Unai, and I don't doubt the players will be up for it. I don't think there'll be any complacency whatsoever. And I think those 2 defeats last season will sharpen Emery's mind and the players' mind, and they will want revenge just personally and professionally for those two defeats.
Yeah, no, well, I don't think there's a better way to finish the pod than that, really, is there? Very, very well put, and I think we share the sentiment. I think we're all of a similar generation. We absolutely hate Man United and everything they've done to us over the years. So, yeah, definitely take a win on Sunday. So, yeah, thank you to the boys. It's good to have the gang back. And chat about a historic victory. It just made sense to have, the goats of the Villa Talks podcast back.
European elite.
European elite. Just the originals back to talk about something. You know, we've all been through a lot together over the years to watch Villa and to see that victory. Hopefully it's not the peak as they were talking about on TalkSport today. Hopefully it's the start of something new and a new era for us where we are truly in that elite bracket. So yeah, historic win, great victory. Man United on Sunday. Let's back it up. Let's hope the players can do the job on Sunday as well. Continue the momentum. We'll be back next week post Man United game. And yeah, I'm doing it every week. The pod is working, it's happening, and we've got a big squad to choose from. Thankfully, this year, and it's working well. So thanks to the boys again for their time. Appreciate it. Thank you for you all out there for listening and watching us on YouTube. Please do subscribe, like, put your post notifications on. And if this is the first time watching, you like what you hear, then please do subscribe or follow us on whatever podcast platform you're on. And we'll be back next week to talk about Man United and hopefully another victory and continue that momentum, as I said. And apart from that, really, nothing else for me really else to say apart from up the Villa.
Up the Villa.
Up the United.